Speaking to the press recently, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit commented that the government of Dominica remains committed to electoral reform and to the furnishing of national ID cards for Dominicans. The Prime Minister indicated that all the resources necessary to produce the cards have been approved by the government.
First of all, the government, by its actions, have demonstrated its absolute commitment to these processes. We have provided the Electoral Commission with all of the monies required to acquire the infrastructure. We have approved all of the staff they require to effect these changes.
In May, Parliament became heated amidst protests and members were unable to come to an agreement on the election amendment bill proposed by the government, and so the discussion was suspended.
But as Prime Minister of this country, I do not see the need for this type and level of behavior by the opposition elements in our country. It is not necessary and it is very dangerous. It was my intention to embrace legitimate concerns of the opposition and perhaps defer action on the bill in Parliament until such time as bipartisan committee of the Parliament would have had an opportunity to deliberate on the draft and make known its concerns and recommendations. That is how parliaments around the region and the world function and operate. But here in Dominica, it seems different because of a new style of leadership from certain quarters. I will not expose members of Parliament, staff of the Parliament, the media, visitors and other interest groups to threats of physical danger by mob-like rioters acting at the behest of the leader. Dominica has too painstakingly built its image and reputation for peace, civility and tranquility for me to join with others in sullying that good name. Accordingly, I have today advised the Honorable Speaker of the House that Parliament should reconvene as agreed tomorrow morning, but adjourned without further consideration of matters of the other paper. This is the best way, I believe, for us to avoid obvious confrontation that others are seeking. Failure to pass this and other laws in a timely fashion is not too high a price to pay for minimizing the threat to life, limb, and property in Dominica.
The Prime Minister stated that the protest action should be the last resort where the opposition disagrees to amendments made to a particular piece of legislation. Opposition leader Lennox Linton had said that his party welcomed the Prime Minister's decision to suspend debate on the controversial Election Amendment Bill and the Registration of Electors Amendment Bill.
The parliamentary opposition welcomes government's decision to defer consideration of the bills to amend the electoral laws of Dominica brought before the May 23rd, 2017 meeting of the Parliament, pending review and public consultation. In the public interest of freedom, democracy, elections with integrity, and the integrity of the constitutional rule of law in Dominica, this is the course of action that we recommended to the Prime Minister by letter dated the 18th of May 2017, one day after receiving notice of the government's intention to enact the proposed amendments during the May 23rd, 2017 meeting.
Back in June, the Electoral Commission of Dominica announced that it now has at its disposal over $6 million to fund the necessary infrastructure for the introduction of identification cards, the effective verification of the identity of voters, and the sanitation of the list of electors. However, the Prime Minister last week indicated that the Electoral Commission can only do so much, as final say rests with Parliament.
The legal authority resides with the Parliament, and as the entire country knows, we did in fact go to Parliament to seek to pass the legislation. The opposition was completely opposed to it. They have not since then provided any alternate, which sections in the legislation that you have difficulties with, and what are your alternative amendments. Talking about it on a talk show is not sufficient. We are members of parliament, and we have to take this work very seriously.
He went on to commend the chief election officer for all the effort to sensitize the general public.
So we're very committed to this. It's a matter for the country now to determine the next steps, because we have not yet received from any one of those who are opposed to the legislation what are the alternatives.
So how
because the Electoral Commission can only move forward with the legislative authority. I commend the efforts of the Chief Election Officer in going out and sensitizing and informing the public and soliciting questions from them as to what the legislation speaks to and what the electoral reform speaks to. And we will recognize that the government is correct in the process. And it's unfortunate, but that's the usual practice. There are people who say they want certain things, but when they get it, they don't want it anymore.
No date has been set to go back to Parliament on the issue, Skerrit says, because the draft has not changed, as no indications have been made as to the exact sections of the draft that are being opposed and what alternatives are possible. More news still to come right after this.